While the heinous crimes perpetrated by the senior leadership of the Nazi regime during the Second World War are a matter of extensive historical record, the subsequent fates of their wives have remained a comparatively obscure aspect of this history. These women were the spouses of some of the most infamous figures of the 20th century, raising the question of their destiny after the regime's collapse. Did they face retribution for their husbands' actions, or were they permitted to recede into quiet obscurity? We will now examine the post-war trajectories of several wives of Nazi officials, beginning with the life of Ilse Hess. The life of Ilse Hess was defined by an unshakable devotion to the National Socialist cause, and her union with Rudolf Hess, who served as Adolf Hitler's deputy. She was Rudolf's most resolute supporter, remaining at his side throughout the tumultuous era of the Third Reich. Ilse and Rudolf first met in the early 1920s, and their courtship developed against the backdrop of rising National Socialism. In the year 1921, she first became a member of the Nazi Party, rejoining in 1925, following its temporary prohibition. Despite her initial attraction to Rudolf Hess, he was reportedly hesitant to initiate a romance. It was Ilse who introduced Hess to Adolf Hitler, a man known for his engagement. In the social circles cultivated by wealthy female patrons, Hitler proved to be instrumental in orchestrating the marriage between Ilse and Rudolf, a union that was formalized on December 20, 1927, in Munich. Furthermore, Hitler himself served as the godfather to their sole child, a son named Wolf Rudiger Hess, born in 1937. During the war years, Ilse remained an ardent and unwavering supporter of the Nazi regime. This profound loyalty was starkly demonstrated following her husband's unauthorized solo flight to Scotland in a misguided attempt to broker a peace accord with the United Kingdom. In the face of the severe consequences of this ill-conceived mission, Ilse vehemently defended his motives and maintained her allegiance to the party's ideology. In the post-war era, Ilse Hess's existence was defined by the immense challenges of reconstruction and adapting to a world that had been fundamentally and irrevocably altered. Following her husband's sentence of life imprisonment at the Nuremberg trials, she was left with the sole responsibility of raising their son. In the aftermath of the Second World War, Ilse Hess, along with the wives of other high-ranking Nazi officials convicted or executed at Nuremberg, was taken into custody. She was subsequently transferred to an internment camp in Augsburg, and upon her release, she relocated to the Allgäu region, where she established a guest house. By the year 1955, she was an unwavering adherent to National Socialism, remaining fervently devoted to Adolf Hitler and his doctrines until the end of her life. In the post-war era, she provided aid to Still Hilfe, a clandestine organization dedicated to assisting arrested, condemned, and fugitive members of the SS. Her contentious book titled England, Nuremberg, Spandau, which was published in 1952, garnered a degree of notoriety, with her correspondence including known sympathizers of Hitler. She dedicated her later years to campaigning for her husband's release from Spandau prison, where he remained incarcerated until his death in 1987. Ilse died on September 7, 1995, leaving a complex legacy inextricably linked to the Passeverter, tumultuous history of Nazi Germany. Marguerite Himmler was the wife of the Reichsführer SS, Heinrich Himmler. In a profound irony, Marguerite Himmler had originally trained as a nurse, with the stated purpose of preserving life during the First World War. Following the war, she began working at a German Red Cross hospital, and, with financial backing from her father, she successfully operated her own private nursing clinic. Margaret first encountered Heinrich Himmler during one of his lecture circuits in the year 1927. His fascination with her was reportedly instantaneous, captivated as he was by her blonde hair and blue eyes. The couple wed in July of the subsequent year, despite Heinrich's considerable hesitation to introduce Margaret to his devoutly Catholic family, owing to their age disparity, her status as a divorcee, and her Protestant faith. In time, his family offered their reluctant acceptance of the union. The couple's daughter, Gudrun, was born on August 8, 1929. Marguerite was by no means a passive observer of her husband's political endeavors. She formally joined the Nazi Party in 1928 and frequently hosted social functions for the wives of senior SS officers. Nevertheless, her standing among this circle was precarious. She was notably disliked during the Nuremberg rally of 1938. She clashed with the other women, who ultimately refused to accept her authority. By late 1939, Marguerite was tasked with supervising the Red Cross hospitals across the Berlin-Brandenburg district. This capacity saw her dispatched on official visits to territories under the occupation of the German Wehrmacht. Within her personal diary, she chronicled a journey to Poland, then under German military control. An entry from March 1940 confirms her first-hand observations of the conditions there, in which Marguerite described her travels through Posen, Lodz, and Warsaw, using deeply derogatory language for the Jewish and Polish populaces. Many of them bore little resemblance to human beings, and the filth was beyond description. Establishing any semblance of order was a monumental task. Yet through her endeavors, Himmler attained the rank of colonel within the German Red Cross. By February of 1945, Margarete had penned a letter to Gebhard Himmler, Heinrich Himmler's brother, in which she conveyed her sentiments about Heinrich, stating, "How wonderful that he has been called to great tasks and is equal to them. The entirety of Germany looks to him." Then, in April of 1945, Margarete and Heinrich Himmler had their final encounter before his demise. In truth, their marriage had effectively dissolved years prior, after Margarete discovered in 1941 that Heinrich was maintaining a clandestine relationship with his secretary, an affair that produced 2 children. Following the conclusion of the war, Marguerite faced a series of intensive investigations intended to probe the full extent of her knowledge concerning her husband's wartime activities. She consistently denied any such awareness and sought to be exonerated from any association with the Nazi Party, thereby absolving herself of her husband's atrocities. After a lengthy deliberation, in 1953, she was ultimately classified as a profiteer of the Third Reich, and was consequently sentenced to 30 days of penal labor. As a further consequence, she was stripped of her voting rights and forfeited her eligibility for a pension. Upon her release, she adopted the pseudonym Marguerite Boden, and lived under this assumed name until her death in 1967, in a concerted effort to distance herself from her troubled past. Now we turn to the story of Lena Heydrich. Lena's brother, Hans, was a fervent member of the Nazi Party and the SA. His fervent advocacy for the party persuaded Lena to attend a rally in 1929, where Adolf Hitler delivered a speech that left a profound impression on her, ultimately prompting Lena to join the Nazi Party. It was at a rowing club ball in Kiel, at the age of just 19, that she first encountered Naval Lieutenant Reinhard Heydrich, a meeting that would eventually lead to their engagement announcement on the 18th of December, 1930. However, the following year proved tumultuous, as Heydrich found himself facing charges of conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman, stemming from the violation of an engagement promise to a woman with whom he had been involved for 6 months prior to his betrothal to Lena. This transgression ultimately resulted in his dismissal from the Navy in April of that year, leaving him without a profession. It was Lena who then suggested the possibility of pursuing a career within the newly established Schutzstaffel, or SS. Coincidentally, Heinrich Himmler's plans for an SS intelligence service were taking shape, and upon meeting Heydrich, Himmler promptly appointed him as the new chief of this nascent intelligence service, which would later become infamous as the Sicherheitsdienst, or the SD. In recognition of her husband's unwavering commitment to the Nazi ideology, Hitler bestowed upon Lena a substantial estate in rural Bohemia, where she maintained several individuals for forced labor, and it is alleged she subjected them to physical abuse. The family occupied this residence until April of 1945, at which point they, along with countless other Germans, fled the advance of the approaching Soviet Red Army. Following the Second World War, Lena was acquitted during the denazification proceedings. Through a series of legal battles against the West German government in 1956 and 1959, she successfully obtained a state pension, a profoundly controversial decision given her husband's central role in the Holocaust. Despite having been convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment in absentia by Czechoslovakia, she successfully evaded serving the sentence. In 1965, during a trip to Finland, she met and subsequently married Finnish theatre director Mauno Manninen, a move widely seen as a means to change her infamous surname. She then managed her first husband Reinhard Heydrich's former summer residence on Fehmarn, transforming it into a restaurant and inn, until a fire tragically destroyed it in 1976. She later authored a memoir titled Life with a War Criminal. She relentlessly defended her first husband's legacy until her death at the age of 74, on August 14, 1985. Emmy Goering. Emmy Goering became the wife of the prominent Luftwaffe chief and Nazi official, Hermann Göring, on April 10, 1935. It is a curious fact that although Emmy never actively pursued membership, she was presented with a Nazi Party induction as a Christmas gift in 1938. Emmy Goering frequently served in the capacity of Hitler's hostess at numerous state functions before the onset of the Second World War. Her self-appointed role as the First Lady of the Third Reich created a significant animosity with Hitler's long-term companion, Eva Braun, whom Emmy openly dismissed and treated with contempt. This behavior ultimately resulted in Hitler compelling Hermann Göring to command Emmy to treat Eva with proper deference. One notable repercussion of Emmy's dismissive attitude was her banishment from Hitler's Bavarian mountain retreat, the Berghof. Eva Braun reportedly harbored a deep and lasting resentment for Emmy and her presumption of being the de facto First Lady of the Reich. Emmy found herself in a position of considerable influence and affluence in Europe, thereby indulging in an opulent lifestyle throughout the Second World War. Her husband's acquisitions of mansions, estates, and castles throughout Austria, Germany, and Poland, all acquired through the confiscation of priceless art and vast wealth from Jewish individuals and others deemed enemies of the Nazi regime, were stark testaments to their immense opulence. Following the birth of their daughter Edda, her husband commanded a flyover of 500 aircraft above Berlin, reportedly stating that he would have doubled that number had the child been a son. In the aftermath of the war, a German denazification court convicted Emmy for her role as a prominent Nazi, sentencing her to 1 year of incarceration. Upon her release, 30% of her remaining assets were confiscated, and furthermore, she was prohibited from appearing on stage for a period of 5 years. After her time in prison, Emmy Goering secured a modest apartment for herself within the city of Munich. She also authored an autobiography titled My Life with Goering. Emmy's life concluded in Munich on June 8, 1973. At the age of 80 years old, this concludes our examination of this complex historical figure. We welcome your thoughtful analysis in the comments section. We encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to stay informed of more in-depth historical content. We thank you for your viewership and look forward to our next analysis. Until next time.